The Article 1 branch, the legislative branch, is supposed to legislate. They cannot subdelegate their legislative authority to these unelected bureaucrats with their statutes and regulations who are doing the real governing. So people ask, why are they passing these 4,000 or 5,000 page bills that nobody reads? Kind of the point, right? You pass a 4,000 or 5,000 page bill, kind of frames out in general, kind of, some of the things that are to be addressed, and then the bureaucrats put the fine point on it with their statutes and regulations, which allows them to do two things, the elected officials. They go back home to their district and go, you know, that's not really my fault. That was the EPA or the FDA. Those bureaucrats who are doing this to you, I'm going to go back to D.C. I'm going to fight that as hard as I can. As they passed a bill that empowered the unelected bureaucrats to actually do that because it allows them to get off the hook. It has made their lives so much easier to not govern.
All right, guys, 43 days to go, just over 6 weeks. I hope you had a good weekend. I did. Nice and relaxing. Got a lot of stuff done, but a lot of research, too, because we got a big 43 days ahead of us. Ned Ryun is here. He's going to be with us in just a little bit. Tomorrow, James Blair, the political director of the Trump campaign, is back with us. Lot to get through with him. So make sure you're hitting that notification button now, because if you remember, the last time we spoke to James Blair of the Trump campaign, it went viral. Like, we went through key states. I'm going to ask him about their early vote program. So this is going to be huge. And then Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, brand new movie out. He's going to be here Wednesday. I mean, just huge week headed our way. So don't miss this. We're going to talk about the ground game, the money advantage that Harris has, where we are in these key battleground states. I'll bump up the map that I did. How did they feel about the blue wall? A lot of attention on that episode that we did, and we'll talk about that this coming Friday a little bit more. And then every week we're going to break it down even more. So continue to tell your friends. I think we're going to look at Wednesdays. Wednesdays is going to be our day to give you an update on the road to 270, because we don't have a lot of time left. So that's like 6 more times. By the way, talk about a strange endorsement. We spent a lot of time last week talking about endorsements. The IRS union, woohoo! They're backing Kamala Harris. I'm not really sure you want that one, but she deserves it. So tout it. And by the way, a sadder kind of update. This guy, Ryan Routh, who was the guy that tried to potentially assassinate Donald Trump a second time at the golf course. Yeah, no question about it now. He left a letter, the dum-dum, making it clear that he wanted everyone to finish the job if he didn't get it done. So for all the talk about the rhetoric, we now know that he believes that this is his mission and that he's urging others to finish the job if he wasn't successful. The rhetoric clearly having a play. I mean, I know the Democrats and the media want to go, oh, well, there's no connection. Well, he left a note, dummies. He's very clear about this. So I'm just telling you, this is what's happening. All right, I want to get to some of the new polls that are out there, an update on debates. Oh, what else? Oh, there's so much. And by the way, answering questions, I'm going to show you a contrast that's pretty clear. So, by the way, speaking of taxpayer-funded money, before I do this, let me just show you what your tax dollars will go to under a Kamala Harris administration. Take a look.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
All right. Well, speaking of taxes and tax networks and the administrative state, we're going to talk about that with Ned Ryun. I've told you this before. Whether you owe 10 million, 10,000, 5 million, whatever, 50 grand, personal business, the IRS has the administrative state built into it. These folks can come after you. The Democrats just plussed up the agency big time, like 50,000 new agents. They're sending out payout notices to people like, here's how much we think you owe. We're going to come ransack your life, go through every aspect of it. If you get one of these calls or visits from the IRS saying, hey, we think you owe us money, personal business, whatever, get a professional. Do not talk to them. Do not engage with them. They're not interested in small talk. These guys mean business. I suggest the folks at Tax Network USA, and if you go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, you will get the benefit of their expertise. These guys have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. They know what they're doing. They've got the expertise and the professionalism to take the IRS head on. Do not go it alone. Trust me, the IRS has all of the federal government behind them. And you need someone on your side. And my friends at Tax Network are the people that I suggest. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All right. Let me just tell you, NBC is out this morning. You might have seen it on some of the networks. New polling show a national race. Guess what? We don't vote nationally. So who cares? I've said this before, and this is the thing. They want to figure out what shiny nickel should we get you to look at so that you're not paying attention to what's really going on here and that you'll support Kamala Harris because we don't like Donald Trump. That's the message from the media. But let me tell you that there are a bunch of new polls out from the New York Times in states that matter. Here's the Arizona. Trump 50, Harris 45. 5 points, Trump at the key 50% mark. In Georgia, Trump 49, Harris 45, a 4-point lead. And in North Carolina, a Trump 2-point lead, 49-47. These key states echo what we talked about in our road to 270 map, right? You remember that? The road to 270 where we talked about Trump probably getting these key states. I shade all of these red for him because that's what's going to happen. The polls track it. And it's all going to come down to that blue wall. And that's where I said the other day, and I continue to believe that. All he has to do is win one of those 3 states. We're going to talk about this tomorrow with James Blair from the Trump campaign. One of them, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I feel really bullish. I do. I feel really bullish on Pennsylvania. But it doesn't matter. He picks off one. He's back in the White House. And they know this in the Harris campaign. I'm just telling you, this is going to be a big, big thing. Over the weekend, CNN said that they wanted another debate, October 23rd. Harris agreed to it. Trump saying, hey, it's probably late. Who knows? We'll ask James Blair about that too. But I want to, and then there's also this big talk that they might do 60 minutes. I don't understand why Trump does this. But October 7th, they're saying back to back. I'm not a huge fan of this. I'm not a huge fan of this. But Trump loves legacy media. He loves 60 minutes. And I'm going to tell you this. All right. One of the things that I think is huge when you look at Harris's poll numbers is the people who are undecided say we want more specificity. And I want you to look at this video. I'm going to warn you, it's 2 minutes. But this lays out to me the perfect contrast. People, the number one issue is the economy, inflation, how much the cost of living is for families and businesses. Well, they both got asked the same question in different forms. Take a look.
How are you going to bring down the cost of food and groceries?
Good. Very good. Thank you. So we have to start always with energy. Always. I don't want to be boring about it, but there's no bigger subject. It covers everything. If you make donuts, if you make cars, whatever you make, energy is a big deal. And we're going to get that. It's my ambition to get your energy bill within 12 months down 50%. If I can do that, you've done a hell of a job. 5-0, not 15, 50. Interest rates are going to follow, and actually they're going to follow for another reason. The economy is now not good, and interest rates, you'll see they'll do the rate cut and all the political stuff tomorrow, I think. And, will he do a 0.5 point? Will he do a 1/4 point? But the reason is because the economy is not good. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do it. But we're going to get interest rates down, and we got to work with our farmers. Our farmers are being decimated right now. They're being absolutely decimated. And, one of the reasons is we allow a lot of farm product into our country, and we're going to have to be a little bit like other countries. We're not going to allow so much We're going to let our farmers go to work.
We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that.
Okay. Look at Trump. He's clear. This is what I'm going to do to bring costs down. This is how I'm going to do it. Blah, 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 blah. Harris, a word salad. What is this? And the funny thing is, this is so obvious. If you're her staff, you know this. This is what voters want. Just give me some specificity. I mean, shoot, she could just come up with 5 things. I'm going to cut taxes on this thing, and that shows this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this regular. Figure out an answer. It's not that hard. This is the easiest thing in the world to do. Give her 5 things on a card and say, just read these 5 things. Say, that's my solution. I think at the very least, the media would say she has a plan. They don't really care. They just need something. Why doesn't, this is the most interesting thing as far as I'm concerned. Answer the stupid question. Answer it. She can't do it, can she? If she loses, and she will, it's because of this. She can't answer the basics because you know what? Deep in her heart, she knows the answers. I'm part of the problem. I want to raise taxes. I want to make government bigger. I don't know how to deal with this. I'm really out of my league. Those are the real answers. She just can't say them. All right, I want to bring in Ned Ryun. He's got a brand new book out warning about the dangers of the administrative state. Also, his organization is in the key battleground states doing voter registration, absentee and early vote chase. They're getting people out to the polls. And I'm going to ask him about what they're doing and how the Trump campaign is doing that. All right, before I bring in Ned, though, I want to tell you about my friends at 4 Patriots because we've seen the unexpected in this political cycle. The unexpected could happen in our lives, too. We could lose power for a day, days, a week, weeks, months. And especially if it's an electrical grid attack, it could have our entire system out for weeks. That means if you have a generator like I used to, a gas one, you don't know that they're going to take credit cards. Even if the gas station's open, will they take a credit card? So the best thing is to have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in your house. I have one. I rely on it. It uses a solar panel that comes free with it to power it up. And man, can it power the most powerful things. You're talking your refrigerator, tablets, TVs, computers, devices. And when I say devices, I also mean medical devices. Maybe you've got something critical that you have to power up. If you need to worry about that for days on end, you need a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in your house. It is cool because it's portable. You can bring it in. You can bring it around. There's no noise. There's no fumes. I love that thing. So go right now because they sell out often. Go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. That's 4patriots.com/Spicer and get your own Patriot Power Generator 2000X. Again, 4patriots.com/Spicer. All right. Without further ado, Ned Ryun. Hey, Ned, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Congrats on the book.
I appreciate it. Good to be with you, Sean.
You know, I've done this a few times myself. I know how hard it is, but the nice thing is when I check on your book, you continue to have great sales. So I think it's a testament to the quality of the book and obviously how many interviews you're doing. So
yeah, I tell people who are interested in writing a book, understand that the hardest process is maybe not even writing the book. It's what comes next.
Yeah.
And talking about it nonstop for weeks. But it's something that I really wanted to do, Sean, especially with this book, American Leviathan, because I believe it is one of the key issues for the 2024 elections. What are you going to do with this unelected massive bureaucracy of the administrative state filled with these unelected bureaucrats who think they decide? I mean, that's really the conflict. Yeah. Sean, you were there.
Well, and that's I want to get into that. So tell me, first of all, I think for a lot of folks, I've noticed this. Define for people who are sitting back and saying, okay, you talk about the administrative state. Yep. What is that? Define it.
So it's this massive bureaucracy started over 100 years ago by the progressive movement, which, by the way, Sean, wanted nothing to do with the original intent of the Constitution. The whole point of their movement was to destroy the political and moral authority of the U.S. Constitution, and in so doing, destroy the machinery of the Republic. And I use that term very specifically, Sean, because the machinery of the Republic is the separation of powers, where you have Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, legislative, executive, judicial branches in which there's a diffusion of power, because that's the greatest protector of our natural inherent rights. Progressives wanted nothing to do with that. They wanted to put together this massive bureaucracy, separated out from political accountability, which I want to discuss with you, filled with unelected bureaucrats who do the real governing. And so when I talk about administrative state, again, massive bureaucracy, the deep state is part of it, surveillance state, whatever you want to call it, CIA, NSA, all of that. Very powerful aspect of the administrative state. Then you've got the regulatory state. And Sean, I think that's one of the greatest threats to our economic freedom, but also our national security. When you're having so many regulations, you're pushing stuff offshore. I think that's a real issue for us. And then I call it the retired in place part of the administrative state, the DMV state, Well, there's 800,000 non-essential federal employees that I truly believe are a patronage system for Democrats. I even call it, in some ways, I allude to this in the book a little bit, Sean. It's a patronage system, almost a money laundering operation in which Democrats are hiring these folks who, by the way, you know this, but I'll just say this for your listeners, typically 95% of those political donations coming out of those employees of the administrative state go in one direction, and it's not to Republicans. So the administrative state and this conflict, the book is about the conflict, Sean, and I allude to it at the very beginning, where Donald J. Trump, the great outsider, shows up, duly elected president of the United States, and essentially declares, I'm the duly elected president. I'm the one who decides. A lot of domestic, but certainly a lot of foreign policy. And the administrative state said, we don't think so. We think we're the ones that decide. And that, if you want to peel everything away, Russian collusion, Ukrainian quid pro quo, lawfare, all of that, it is about who decides. And it's also a clash between two very differing governing philosophies, a republic versus administrative state.
All right. So let's break down this, right? You got the president, hopefully Donald Trump. You got 4,000 plus or minus political appointees. And then you have the administrative state, all of these lifelong bureaucrats that actually are the doer bees.
Yes.
How much of the problem are the appointees? Because one of the issues in Trump's first term was that he was appointing people that would be like, yeah, I get you're president. I get you got to do this, but I'm going to do it my way.
Correct. Yeah, no, I mean, Sean, I say it in the book. I'll say it now. One of the most critical, important positions that a lot of people don't know about inside administration is PPO, the Office of Presidential Personnel. You alluded to the Plum Book. Again, it's 4,000, upwards of 5,000 political appointees, which, by the way, I was a Sched C a long, long time ago, Schedule C. 1,300 of those political appointees are just little worker bees in various departments and agencies. They have no decision-making authority. It's really about 400 or 500 key decision makers that administration appoints to go out to the various departments and agencies who are on the same page as the president, implementing his policies, his goals. And if you don't get PPO right, if you don't get those 400 or 500 decision makers right, you end up kind of where the first term was for the first 3 years. It was in the last year that he got PPO right, and then obviously was not able to get reelected. But those first 6 months of a second administration would have been epic. And I think if he gets reelected, he has fully figured out a lot of the problems with D.C. these days, stemming from the administrative state, which I'll point out, Sean, primarily resides inside the Article 2 executive branch, of which the duly elected president is the head of that branch and could do a lot of things to the administrative state if he so chooses.
So there's a lot of projects, efforts going on in D.C. to put I knew this is why I'm asking you this question. I didn't think I'd get the laugh right away, but I thought I'd get the laugh. Who are saying, don't worry, Mr. President. We're going to create a list for you, a resume bank. We'll vet these people. Is anyone doing it right, and how important is that?
So I'm not even going to bother being diplomatic. How insulting that some of these outside entities have said, we're going to actually, don't worry, you go fight the political fight. You go do all this, take all the slings and arrows. We got this. We'll figure out what your next administration looks like and all your policy agenda goals. I even had somebody tell me, well, 2025 is all about America first. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. Where does Donald J. Trump fit into the, Make America Great, America First in 2025? So I think the thing that frustrates me a lot about some of these outside projects, first of all, Donald J. Trump, if and when, and I sincerely hope wins, when he wins, he is the one in charge of deciding who will be inside of his administration. Are people, is he more than happy to have people make suggestions? 100%. But the process by which those people will be decided and appointed comes down to Donald J. Trump and his internal team on transition, and then who he makes his PPO. And, in the first term, it was really a small committee of about 5 people, especially on the important positions, that made the final decision. And so I find it deeply unhelpful. What some people have done, they have shown I'm just going to say it. They are intellectually impaired when it comes to actual real politic in how it works, and also being of help to Trump or being detrimental to him. And I think the thing that's frustrated me about Project 2025, let's put a fine point on it, 80% name ID in battleground states that have acted as an albatross around Trump's neck. Please be quiet. Shut up. You have nothing to do with what the next presidential term looks like. That is Donald J. Trump's decision.
But, okay, fair enough. But let me play devil's advocate for a second. I was there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So there were plenty of times, and the president said to me sometimes, hey, tell me about this Ned Ryan. Should I hire him? Should I not? Or, hey, give me 5 names of people that I should consider. And I would give him names. I guess the question is, how do you staff? How do you hit the ground running? Because that's the issue. I feel like you're right. We need those first 6 months to be impactful and very clear. It's, hey, we're not screwing around anymore. We're coming. Because I remember a lot of conversations I'd have with people. They'd be like, the bureaucrats have made it clear, we're going to outlast you. We're going to just wait you out. We're not going to.
100%.
So how do we get him a cadre of key people? Because I wouldn't know if somebody said to me, hey, who are the best people to take
Transition's
on?
already started. The pieces for transition are already in place. They're already putting those pieces in place. Listen, I think that there are multiple databases.
So that's where it should go through, is the Linda McMahon kind of group that he has anointed and said, this is my team, Don, Eric, Elon, Tulsi.
Which I'd very much like to be part of the transition personnel decisions. I will be talking with them about that. But, if anybody's put together databases for potential people, overkill in some places. I think 20,000 people is insane, especially when there's only about a 5,000 person plum book, of which really only about 500 really count. You got to go through transition. That's Trump's prerogative. If people have put together databases that might be useful reference points, fine, great, all for it, good for them. The biggest part to me is ultimately the decision comes down to Trump and his team and making those right decisions. And having gone through, I will say this, Sean, having gone through 4 years and now another almost 4 years of total persecution, lawfare, etc., I think Trump is, first of all, I don't think he fully understands his power as executive, as head of the executive branch. 2, he's figured out where the real fight is with these administrative state actors. I think he has done a lot of thinking about this and put some pieces in place. And he has some very good advisors who have put in place a series of executive orders that I think will be very interesting to be executed in the first week of his next administration. So let's say that, just for hypothetical, that he deals with the Schedule Cs, the people that he can appoint. There was some talk. Low level. Those are low level.
Okay.
Right.
But the bottom line is, let's say that he gets that piece right, that you got Trump at the top, the schedule, the political appointees.
The higher appointees. Yep.
The administrative state, the people who have said, yeah, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to implement this regulation or this executive order through our agency. How do we root them out, change it, get it right? So
a lot of people have talked about Schedule F, which you reclassify some of these folks. What they have done, Sean, over the course of decades is insulated themselves. I mean, that was the whole point to begin with. I just want to put another fine point on that. The progressives and administrative state, they wanted these bureaucrats to be insulated from any political accountability, and they've done a really good job of doing that. That was the point at the beginning, and over the course of the years have insulated themselves even more. But you can reclassify them. Schedule F, reclassifying some of these folks, reduction in force exercises, in-person visits. This is one thing I mentioned in the last chapter, some reform items. The whole last chapter is about a lot of reform items where the head of the executive branch can go visit some of these various departments and agencies, call on the carpet these bureaucrats who are not actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, stalling. We all know what they do, Sean, especially those of us that have been in D.C. It has been a stalling tactic where they just go, oh, that's not really a priority. 6 months later, nothing really happens. A year later, nothing. He calls them in front of him as head of executive branch, these bureaucrats that are stalling, and asks, why are you not doing what you're supposed to be doing? You should be doing it. If they will not do it, he fires them on the spot. Then it goes to the Supreme Court. Guess what? With this Supreme Court, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. And I'm sure Donald Trump and his administration would be happy to have that conversation in front of the Supreme Court about who's the head of the executive branch and what you're supposed to be doing as a member of that. So let's add a whole series of reform items. You can even do voluntary buyouts. So there's a whole series of things I put in the back that you have to go after this, devolve and dismantle the administrative state. Some of it's going to be highly contentious, Sean. I am not naive on that front. I've told people if and when Trump wins and he declares the administrative state's days are numbered, it will be one of the coldest political wars you have ever seen in Washington, D.C. All this stuff has been a warm-up act for what would come next if he actually goes down this path.
This underscores what you said at the beginning. The Democrats understand what's at stake. This is a power base for them. It's not just patronage, obviously. That's part of it. But the idea that they know that they can have people there that are going to implement progressive policies regardless of what they do. And so this actually
it's their golden calf.
Right. This is an existential threat to their well-being. Do you think one of the ideas that came up last cycle, and it started to get implemented a little, but I don't think people appreciated what you're writing about at the time, is what about moving a lot of these places out of D.C.? So
I love that.
Just because then it's closer to where they should be in terms of the problems. Like, why isn't, the Department of Interior out in New Mexico or Wyoming?
Correct. Or Department of Agriculture in Kansas, where I grew up. I actually mentioned this in my first book, Restoring Our Republic, when I kind of started to delve into a little bit of this problem that I fully focused on with American Leviathan break apart the Leviathan. Put people in North Dakota, put them in Kansas, put them in any other place except for D.C., break apart the state. And at that point, too, you'll probably see people resigning, retiring of their own volition. So you'll see a downsizing because of that. And I think it's one of the reform items. Trump would have to get on board with that, because of all the reform items that I've heard discussed that he likes, this is maybe not top of his list. I don't think he's crazy about it, but I think it's one that would actually point us in the right direction. But I want to say something about why Democrats are going to be so vociferous in their defense of and their attacks against Trump in regards to this administrative state. Progressives have always thought this, and you can see it in their thinking even today. The state is salvation, Sean. It is what is going to solve all of society's ills. It will bring us to a higher plane of perfection as mankind. So if the state is salvation, in progressives' thinking, mind you, why would we ever want to limit salvation?
Right.
And people ask, why does government continue to grow and grow and grow? Because it's built into the DNA of the administrative state. If the state is salvation, you should never limit salvation until it invades every aspect of your life and saves every aspect of your life. Education, healthcare, you name it. That's how they think. So in their minds, the growth of the state is perpetual until it brings salvation. And that's why you find yourselves, what are we, $36 trillion in debt? That's why they're proposing.
I'm so glad you just said the debt word. I brought this up last week with the panel. And I said, what is an issue that is not getting the attention that you thought it was? I think China, AI are two of them, but debt is another one. And debt is because of a lot of things. People, the programs, and to your point, like the more that the thing that I want to put a point on what you said, and this is where people have to understand it. As soon as we solve welfare, and put people back to work, a bunch of bureaucrats don't exist anymore. It is in their 100%. Interest to keep people entrapped in a system, whether it's SNAP or WIC or whatever, because as soon as people are not dependent on the government, there's no need for them. But how do we, I think one of the things is, how do we address, I don't see any member of Congress right now championing waste and whatever, right? You talk about the Department of Defense. They can't pass an audit. You ask some of these places, how many employees do you have? How many employees? I don't know. How can you not know how many people you have and what you're spending money on? And by the way, say, can I have more? Can you give me more money? Okay, fine. What did you do with the money I gave you last time? I don't know. I mean, what moron would ever agree to that? No parent would agree to it, no business. And yet we go, okay, how much?
This is the crazy part to me, Sean. We don't actually have a precise agreed upon figure of how big the federal government is. It's somewhere over 440 in regards to departments, agencies, and sub-agencies, but people disagree. Is it 440? Is it 443? We don't even have a precise figure. And yet Congress, this to me is the kabuki theater that takes place every election cycle. I'm going to get elected. I'm going to go to D.C. I'm going to fight government. I'm going to downsize it. We're going to return to limited government. As most of those people saying that actually just blindly continue to fund the administrative state, which is problem on two fronts, Sean. The Article 1 branch, the legislative branch, is supposed to legislate. They cannot subdelegate their legislative authority to these unelected bureaucrats with their statutes and regulations who are doing the real governing. So people ask, why are they passing these 4,000 or 5,000 page bills that nobody reads? Kind of the point, right? You pass a 4,000 or 5,000 page bill, kind of frames out in general, kind of, some of the things that are to be addressed, and then the bureaucrats put the fine point on it with their statutes and regulations, which allows them to do two things, the elected officials. They go back home to their district and go, that's not really my fault. That was the EPA or the FDA. Those bureaucrats who are doing this to you, I'm going to go back to D.C. I'm going to fight that as hard as I can. As they passed a bill that empowered the unelected bureaucrats to actually do that, because it allows them to get off the hook It has made their lives so much easier to not govern.
So I want to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. Just walk with me on this a second.
Okay, I'll try.
The first question is this. Can we solve the question that you're raising in the book, the inherent problems with the American administrative state, without having the White House? In other words, can Congress do anything, or do we need to have the White House?
It would require them to actually have guts and
well, that's the second question. All right,
be
hold
politically
on.
spineless. No, you cannot.
You're getting ahead. Just give me the first question first. Like, let's just say that we don't win the election. Can Congress do anything?
Well, it would go back to requiring them to actually show some political courage and actually wanting them to do what they're supposed to do, and they will not do it.
But that's my second question then. But I just want to be clear on something, because I believe that while you could probably do a political science class that, yes, Congress has the purse string. The only one who's going to do it, number one, is Trump. So, like, I don't really care. I think the executive can do it, but I also think that Trump's the only one with the
he rejects the premise. That's because he rejects
the man parts.
Well, let me put he's the only one that has the political courage and the guts to actually say, I reject the premise. Again, why he's an existential threat to them, because unlike a lot of previous presidents until, I would say, back to Reagan, a lot of them have accepted the premise that the administrative state is fine, and their only real issue is we don't get to run it. And you ask, could Congress do it? Of course they could. Like you said, the House holds the purse strings where the budget starts, and they can say,
I mean, this is what I don't get.
We're not going to fund this anymore.
But see, this is, to me, so this is like literally,
because you have to have political courage.
But the thing that's so funny is I will have member after member and senator after senator on the show, and I'll say, hey, let me ask you a question. I know this is small potatoes, but why are we funding NPR? And they go, I agree with you, Sean. That's a horrible thing, and we should continue to fight. And, you know, in the next bill, I'm going to tell someone who sits next to me that I don't really think. And I'm like, yeah, but you do understand that all you have to do is say no. And I would be willing to have a fight to say, why are we funding in this day and age a liberal radio station and programming on PBS, like with the internet, et cetera, and just make the Democrats own it. And they go, that's a good point you're making. And I'm like, okay, well, see, I don't have a vote. You do. But no one will fight the fight. I'm like, I would love you just to take the
because they're afraid.
Stuff. That's it. I don't get it. Is that it? They're just a bunch
afraid.
Of yeah.
Yeah, they are afraid. They're afraid. First of all, my dad was in Congress 10 years.
I served with him. He was on the budget committee with me.
A lot of people that are in Congress, this is their life's goal, right? This is their pinnacle of success. They are experts in self-preservation. So, Sean, for them to actually go and make some hard decisions that might bring them under intense attack from corporate propagandists, I refuse to call them corporate media. You've dealt with a lot of them over the course of your career. I consider a lot of them dishonest, unethical, whose point is not honesty and truth. It's about amplifying the approved narrative and being attack dogs to protect those who hold the same worldview, administrative state. So these people that refuse to act in Congress, art of self-preservation. They don't want to take the hard stance or feel they'll come under attack. And even more importantly, they might lose their next reelection and they won't be in D.C. anymore. They won't be called Congressman so-and-so or U.S. Senator so-and-so. And they'll have to go back to the private sector. So there's a whole host of nasty incentives. And what has been allowed in this current form of government, they pass it off to those unelected bureaucrats. Then they go home and bemoan it. While most of the American people don't fully understand this, again, kabuki theater that's taking place to go, well, wait a minute. It's because you're abdicating unconstitutionally your legislative power to these unelected bureaucrats to duck the hard decisions.
When your dad was on the budget committee, I was there on the committee, and we had this one proposal one year where you said to everyone, you had to find 1% of waste within your jurisdiction. And it just could be it could be anything. You could come up with it. And they all went, oh my God, I don't know that I can do that. We just said, hey, look, and if you can't, then we just cut 1%. 1%.
I know. It's insane.
And it was like, oh, I can't do, and I'm like, this is easy. I can do this in my sleep. Go through any federal agency and there's a ton of it. But no one wants to actually. And I feel like what we do is we're here right now on September 23rd. We're 7 days away from another government shutdown. We'll cave. We'll spend more money. And I get it. It's just, but here's the problem. I had that last year before the McCarthy speakers race, I think it was. We were having this discussion and all these guys said, we can't fall into the same trap of ending up at the end of September. And I'm like, great. go through the approach process, weed out
Right.
bad crap, ask for
Right.
audits from these agencies that we've never heard of, and say, what do you still do? And if
Stop
they
the
don't,
omnibus stupidity.
but then we find ourselves back there, gosh, look at where we are again. And I'm like, okay, what did you do? I mean, honestly, I feel like every time I go get a physical, right, and my doctor
Right.
says, here are the 3 changes you need to make in your life. And a year
Right.
later, I sit down and he's like, so did you? I'm like, listen, here's what, I just didn't have time for the following. I didn't, and I'm like, he's like, dude, I'm telling you what you need to do. And
Right.
you're just giving me a bunch of excuses. And now I feel like a member of Congress because I'm like,
This-
look, I got really busy and then I had to go to the gym.
Yeah.
All right.
The system conform. The thing that's scary to me, and my dad saw this, the system exerts so much pressure for you to conform, and you pair that with self-preservation. The easy path is just to go down that path we were just talking about of abdicating your role as elected legislators. So, but there's a couple of things though that I think. So you asked, can we actually address this without Congress? Not for long-term reform, but short-term reform, we could do a lot. And that's why I said Donald Trump head of the executive branch as a Supreme Court that's actually saying, hey, this whole form of governing with the administrative state is deeply unconstitutional. And they did a couple of things this summer, Sean, that I think put cracks in the foundation of the administrative state. Chevron deference. Again,
Yes.
we're not going to defer to these unelected bureaucrat statutes and regulations anymore. And that's been going on for 40 years. And the other one that I don't think a lot of people even paid that close attention to was the SEC tribunals, in which the Supreme Court said to the Securities and Exchange Commission, you don't get to have your private administrative law tribunals in which you're literally judge, jury, and executioner 90% of the time you're ruling in favor of the SEC. Deeply unconstitutional, calls into question an independent judiciary, which was very important to our founders. Oh, by the way, too, Sean, annihilates the idea of the Seventh Amendment right to trial by jury. So powerful executive, Supreme Court stepping up. But then the reason I wrote the book, the American people need to understand. I mean, you and I have been in D.C. for a very long time. And my goal with the book was to try and deconstruct, translate to the layman, here's what's going on, here's the philosophy behind it, and here's some reform items that need to take place. The American people need to reject this wholesale.
The deconstructing, because too many times people want to make everything this black and white issue, and it's more complicated than that, and it's not as easy in understanding. And so I'm glad you did this, because I think people understanding and explaining the process, and this is kind of what I've always said about the show, is what's crucial. Because yes, you can do X, Y, and Z, but here are the consequences. And that's one of the things that I want to, I know this is sort of a hard turn, but one of the things about understanding the process that I've explained to people is this year the law has changed. It's allowed outside groups to coordinate on and you also lead groups that are involved in get out the vote efforts.
I do.
So walk me through.
And I chose not to coordinate, just FYI.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Okay, so first tell me why, and then second tell me what you're doing and where.
So the FEC, Federal Election Commission, made a decision earlier this year that campaigns and outside groups like myself, American Majority Action, could coordinate on canvassing, on doors only. The problem then became is with my kind of holistic approach to absentee ballot generation, chase, and early voting, it's doors, it's phones, it's texting, it's digital, it's reminder postcards. If you were to do that, you'd have had to firewall off all your door knockers, of which I will have, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds. We'll have about 1,500 people.
So slow that down. So in other words, if you just focused on knocking on doors and saying, Mrs. Smith, are you voting for who?
Right.
You can coordinate. But if you then followed that up with a text, you can't coordinate?
You cannot coordinate off of using some of the targeting, some of the messaging, all that stuff. It had to be firewalled off. So you'd have had to have door knocking teams separated out. Literally, you didn't really know what they were doing or who they were targeting. And the whole point being, Sean, if you're going to do this in a sophisticated, data-driven, but also multi-layered, different angles of attack on channels of, is it texting, is it phones? You got to hit them with a door knock, and then you've got to hit them with a reminder postcard. You got to hit them with a live call and then a text. And then there's another. It's a series of targeted harassments. That's really what it comes down to for an absentee ballot chase. Of we know you have a ballot, you have not yet returned your ballot, and it's also about. I'll get to this in a second. I want to talk about the economics of early voting. But it has to be a sophisticated way in which you're constantly hitting them on a different platform. So addressable digital ads, reminding them, we know you have a ballot, then another text, then, God forbid, another door knock because that starts to get expensive, another live phone call. At a certain point, just if you return your ballot, the beatings will stop. I mean, literally, that's what it comes down to, right? Like, we'll stop harassing you because you've returned your ballot.
Right.
The other thing that we're trying to do, so we're doing this in Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, North Carolina, with a little bit in Minnesota, but not heavily invested in that. We are trying to communicate to folks the economics of early voting. If you have a ballot, you need to return it ASAP, because that'll cost us maybe $10 or $12 on a first flight. Everybody, American Majority Action, Trump, whoever else, contacting you. $10 or $12 if you turn your ballot fairly quickly. You wait a few weeks, it's going to be $20. You wait until Election Day, and this is one of my most frustrating conversations, Sean. I get it. I only want to vote on Election Day. By the time I contact you, God knows how many times, Trump, everybody else, and you don't vote until Election Day, $100. Why do you hate me? Why do you hate Donald Trump? You could have returned your ballot very beginning, or the first day early voting started, which I did in Virginia on Friday. I went out and voted early along with my wife and my son, who just turned 18, got registered to vote. To save money, I'm off the list now. People are not going to have to waste time on doors, phones, texts, postcards, you name it, if they're being sophisticated on data, which is a whole other question mark. But if they are, they save money. And so what we're trying to do, I noticed this after the midterms, after I picked myself off the floor, wondering if I really knew anything about politics. And said, you know what we got to do? We got to export the Florida GOP absentee ballot chase to key battleground states in 2024. I ran a couple pilot programs last year to just demonstrate to donors it does export to other states. And really what the Florida GOP did was 6 weeks absentee ballot chase and trying to get no less than 80% of the ballots they thought were needed in before Election Day. You do that, you can give yourself a really good shot of winning.
So I live here in Virginia, and you're telling me, and I'm by the way, I always vote early. But You're saying I should go down literally this afternoon, cast that ballot, because it's $12. It's going to cost them $12 now that they've sent me some text and whatever. The longer I wait, it becomes closer to 100. So I'm saving them upwards of 80,
Well, it could be a factor of 10 if you wait until Election Day. And I tell people this, and I would say we do a lot of trainings through our C3 American Majority. The whole point being, first of all, campaigns, the only campaign that I knew of in recent times that had way too much money and didn't know what to do with it was Obama's, right? Most of the time, you don't have a whole ton of resources that you're just laying around like, I'm just going to throw in the crazy stuff. So save the campaign's money to allow them to refocus those very, important resources to target those who are a bit slower to get to the polls, to get to that 80+%. Because my whole point being, Sean, focus on those things, but also to create a narrative. If you can create and show in the numbers a narrative that Donald Trump in these 7 states that we know will decide the White House is either in the lead or narrowly behind on the ABEV vote coming into Election Day, traditionally Republicans crush the Election Day voting by significant percentage. If he comes in anywhere close to the lead on Election Day in these key states, Donald Trump will be reelected to the White House.
So honestly, I'm concerned about the ground game on the Trump side.
A little bit.
Okay. So is it? No, but I mean, because
they decided that outside groups are going to carry most of the burden.
But to me, I feel like for the first time, they're basically saying, we'll trust you guys, not you, but like you outside groups. And we hope that you do really well. And we hope that you execute, and we hope that you follow up. I'm like, that's a lot of trust putting in for the first time ever.
It has caused me real concern on some level, Sean. I tell my staff all the time, though, we are only in control of those things that we actually control. I would strongly
encourage serenity prayer.
I tell them, do not stress about things that you do not control. We only have so much bandwidth and funding. I will say this. I have some concerns that maybe not being executed like it should be. We have time to actually fix that, but it better be ASAP.
So tomorrow, James Blair's on the show, political director for the Trump campaign.
Yeah, I know James very well.
What should I ask him?
How's the ground game going? How's the field game? How's the AB generation and chase program going? How's the early vote going? Is there accountability in regards to these groups actually doing what they're supposed to be doing? And I would ask him, I actually do trust Tim Saylor very much, who's running the data program for the Trump campaign, grassroots targeting, Blaze Hazelwood, Tim Saylor. They're doing an excellent job. The question is, are we able to utilize that data like we should be to make sure the ABEV vote is going as well as it could be? And then what are the plans for the Trump campaign to make sure that any gaps they might see in the outside groups are being addressed and funded correctly?
Okay.
I can send you more questions.
No, yeah. Hey, you got my stuff. You got 24 hours.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the book. If you're
Thank you.
interested in American Leviathan, the links are in the show bio. Go check it out there. We'll tweet it out, obviously. Continue to rock
that.
it. And I think, especially for folks who are thinking about going into the Trump administration, I would read this book. I would understand what you're up against so that you're not on day one going, oh my gosh, why didn't anyone tell you? Ned Ryun is telling you now what you are about to face. So
yeah, and people ask me, why did you? So the publishing house said, hey, we could do a hardback and publish this in January of 2025. I said, no, please don't do that. Just do paperback now. And I'd like it to be a handbook when Trump wins for the members of the transition team, for those members of the Plum Book that will be appointed to read this and go, oh, that's what I'm up against. And this is what I should be prepared for. So you hit that point, Sean. I want this to be something of a handbook so people can go, all right, I know what I'm up against. I'm prepared for the fight as best you can be.
Well, be prepared for the fight. Read it now. You know where to get it. Amazon, all those other places. The links are in our bio. Dad, congrats on the book. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Sean.
Guys, as I mentioned, James Blair, the political director of the Trump campaign, is here tomorrow. You remember the last time we were here with him. Unbelievable sorts of knowledge. We're going to have that same kind of discussion. Ned's questions, I'm typing them in now. And so make sure you hit that notification button, subscribe. On all those channels, you never know when. Plus, Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, brand new movie out that's hitting the charts big time. One of the best conservative documentaries of all time. He's going to talk to us about that on Wednesday. Panel on Thursday. Road to 270 on Friday. We got it all as we head into the final stretch. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.